It's our wish that if you're here this morning, that also you will come back and join us tonight. We have church services here at 6 o'clock every Sunday evening, and we would love to see as many folks here tonight as there are this morning. So if you get a chance, please prioritize being here tonight, coming to worship with the saints, encouraging your brothers and sisters as they see you worshiping and you joining in with them together. I don't have probably as much training as Micah has in terms of preaching. He got to go to preaching school. I haven't got a chance to do that. Tried a couple times, didn't work out. But I have learned a little. And one of the things that I've learned is that you have to vary the purpose of a sermon. Sometimes a sermon is to rebuke. Sometimes a sermon is to impart knowledge. Sometimes a sermon is to inspire. And sometimes a sermon is to actuate. Today, I don't seek to do any of those. I seek to encourage. This morning, I hope you take this message as a mode, an in mode of encouragement. And I think if you see my meaning, and if I can express it the way I've prepared here, I think it shall be an encouragement to you. Matthew chapter 18, verses 21 through 35. It reads this way. Then Peter came and said to him, Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times? Jesus said to him, I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. For this reason the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. When he had begun to settle them, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Sorry, I lost my place there. But since he did not have the means to repay, his Lord commanded him to be sold, along with his wife and children and all that he had, and repayment to be made. So the slave fell to the ground and prostrated himself before him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will repay you everything. And the Lord of that slave felt compassion, and released him, and forgave him the debt. But that slave went out and found one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii. And he seized him and began to choke him, saying, Pay back what you owe. So his fellow slave fell to the ground and began to plead with him, saying, Have patience with me, and I will repay you. But he was unwilling, and went and threw him into prison until he should pay back what was owed. So when his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were deeply grieved, and came and reported to their Lord all that had happened. They summoned him, his Lord, and said to him, You wicked slave, I forgave you all the debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have also had mercy on your fellow slave, in the same way that I had mercy on you? And his Lord, moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers until he should repay all that was owed him. My heavenly Father will also do the same to you, if each of you does not forgive his brother from your heart. Why did Jesus give them this parable? I think it's because sometimes it's difficult to forgive our brothers and sisters, isn't it? I think Jesus had a twofold purpose. He wanted them to understand that he wanted them to forgive from their heart. He wanted them to understand what it was to be forgiven. But also, he wanted to reset the whole idea of forgiveness. Peter, the one there said, should it be up to 7 times? Should it be 7 times that we forgive him? You know, this really complete number that is used many times in the Bible, should it be the 7 times that I should forgive somebody if they come back and do the very same thing, and if they come back to me again, should I forgive them up to 7 times? And Jesus blew him out of the water. He said, not 7 times, but 7 times 70. Full completeness, full forgiveness, as many times as it is asked. He reset their idea of forgiveness and challenged them to a level they had never been challenged before. It's a challenge for us today, isn't it? To forgive our brothers and sisters whenever they do something to us. You know, and if they do something repetitively, we might actually have our patience wear a little bit thin, might we? Man, I can't forgive them again. They've done this 7 times, 8 times, 490 times, but I shall forgive them again. But today, The lesson is not on forgiveness of our brothers and sisters. It's something I think that we need to work on, but I think there's something we need to work on even as much, and that's forgiveness of ourselves. Have you been able to forgive yourself for what you have done in the past? Mikey gave me a couple of different sermon topics to prepare, and it's in his series. You believe him, but. You believe him, but you have a few things that you still need to work out. Today, the title of the lesson is You Believe in Him, but you are still ashamed of your past. We need to learn how to forgive ourselves for the mistakes and the sins of the past if we hope to be whole within ourselves and if we hope to be effective in His kingdom. We've got to learn to forgive ourselves. Today, the first idea that I want you to understand for this encouragement is that the past is gone forever. The past is gone forever. This is taken from an unknown author, but he said, if you are still talking about what you did yesterday, you haven't done much today. Isn't that true? Sometimes we get so busy thinking about what we did in the past that we forget about what's happening now and how we can be useful for Him in the kingdom right now. If you're still talking about what you did yesterday, you haven't done much today. You know, humans are finite beings. We live only in the now. In the past, we understand that we have done a few things, but that is gone. That is something we can't control anymore. We think about the future, and we plan for the future, but how much of that do we really control? We might actually make a few little plans, but I guarantee you that if God has a different plan, it's not going to happen. We don't control that. God controls our future. And even in the present, we only can control what we do. We can't control those who are around us. We can only control our own actions and our own thoughts and what we do. And because of that, I think there's this reason that we go back and we start looking at the past, because everything we kind of feel is uncontrollable. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, you know, and I'm not in full charge of what's happening now, so I'm going to think a little bit about the past. And two things tend to happen. Some people think about the good old days, the glory days. You know, back in high school when, you know, I was the quarterback of the high school team, you know, and I threw that pass that won the state championship. They're reliving the glory days, right? Some people take that kind of a view of the past. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that from time to time, thinking about some things that happened in your past that were positive, that were encouraging, especially if you use those as stepping stones to do what is right in the future and in the now for Him. But sometimes people don't think about the past as the glory days or the good old days. They live in regret for the things that they have done. The sins that they have committed, the mistakes that they have made, and the consequences that they are dealing with. And because of those consequences, they loathe the past and live in regret. As Christians, if we're going to be whole Christians, if we're going to do what's right in His sight, we need to stop living in the past. Whether these things are like the glory days or we're living in regret of these, we need to move past what has happened in the past and start living for Him in the present. That is Paul's encouragement to the church at Philippi. Philippians chapter 3, verses 7 through 16 read this way. But whatever things were gained to me, those things I have counted as lost for the sake of Christ. If you go back earlier in that chapter, he tells all of the things that he could be bragging about. You know, he didn't throw that pass in the state championship game, but he was a Hebrew of Hebrews. He was of the right tribe. He was the tribe of Benjamin. And he had all the zeal. He was a Pharisee. He had the zeal so much as he was persecuting Christians. If anybody had the right to go back and say, I lived the glory days and look at the things that I've done, it was Paul. He had the pedigree. He had the position. He had everything to be proud of. But a juxtaposition here as well. Did he also not have so many things to live in regret?